Today we are revealing the unspeakable name of God as we explore the banned gospel of the Egyptians, also known as the Holy Book of the Great Invisible Spirit. Now, the name of God is said to be unspeakable, that it's a secret invisible symbol. And not only are we going to reveal what the unspeakable name of God is, but we're going to explore the idea that the unspeakable name of God is a creative power. And it has ties to a concept in Freemasonry called the lost word of the master, and is also can be found in the legend of Lilith, where Lilith is cursed for uttering or speaking the name of God, among other things, because to speak the name of God is really to claim that creative force and almost equate oneself with God. So we're going to be revealing what the name of God is, why it's an unspeakable, invisible symbol, and what it has to do with the banned gospel of the Egyptians. So to start off right away, we're going to be opening up here this the gospel of the Egyptians, like I said, also known as the Holy Book of the Great Invisible Spirit, and this is a Gnostic text. Now, why is it called the Holy Book of the Egyptians, or the Gospel of the Egyptians? Well, because the very first sentence here starts off by calling it that. The Holy Book of the Egyptians is about the Great Invisible Spirit. So, it's likely that it wasn't actually written in Egypt, but it is still nonetheless called the Holy Book of the Egyptians. That's what it's called in the text itself. And it's also theorized that it could also be called that because of its importance of the individual named Seth and his possible relationship to the Egyptian god Set. Possibly. But let's really crack into this and start. Also, if you haven't seen my book called God is an Alien, sounds kind of out there, but I recommend watching that because it's a summary of what this book is about. But we're going to be exploring it in detail right now. And let's just start off. Now, again, this is a ban. These books were banned by the church. They were considered a heresy. They were considered a blasphemy. And let's just start, and we'll start unpacking this because there's so much to talk about as we reveal what the unspeakable name of God is. So, it says the Holy Book of the Egyptians is about the great invisible spirit, the Father whose name cannot be uttered. So right away, we start off with this is what the book is about. What is the Holy Book of the Egyptians about? It's about the great invisible spirit. What is the great invisible spirit? The Father whose name cannot be uttered. So right away, this is going to be about the concept of God. Now, it's unfortunate that Father here is being equated with God. Now, Gnosticism, of which this is a Gnostic text, has a ton of emphasis on the importance of the feminine. There are so many feminine heroes in Gnosticism, such as Barbelo, Sophia, Norea, Eve. There are so many powerful, strong, feminine figures in Gnosticism. And I love that about it. Often the feminine is emphasized more so than the masculine. However, unfortunately, there are still some patriarchal remnants within Gnosticism, such as referring to God as Father. Another thing that they do is often refer to things as male, and that's because in their concept, maleness or being male is symbolic for the incorruptible realm or the realm of pure light or the pleroma. So that's why in the Gospel of Mary, I believe it was in the Gospel of Mary. Was it in the Gospel of Mary? I can't remember. We've done so many. No, I believe it was in the Gospel of Thomas. There might have been, I think that there was a reference to this in the Gospel of Mary as well, about making the feminine male or something like that. And this idea of making it male is the idea of associating with it with the true realm, the realm of divine light. And see, that's why I don't like using male and female as symbolic for different aspects of the universe, because then you get into a lot of trouble, because then, well, does that mean male is superior to female? No, it shouldn't. But if you start using those human terms, you lead to problems. Okay, I'm going to focus here because we've only gotten one sentence into this and we have some important things to cover. So let's continue. The Holy Book of the Egyptians is about the great invisible spirit, the Father whose name cannot be uttered, he who came forth from the heights of perfection, the light of the eons of light. Now, there's going to be so much emphasis on here on light that it's almost comical, but this is incredibly important because we're going to see that we're now equating the great invisible spirit, the ground of existence, with light. The light of the eons of light. So not just light, but the light of the eons of light. Very, very important light. Very, very foundational light. So the light of the silence of the providence. So it's really interesting here that we're talking about, we're going to see an emphasis on silence again, the light of the silence of the providence, the Father of the silence. So why are we talking about silence? Because silence is also something that means perfection. It's a symbol for perfection. Silence is, I'm not saying anything. Silence is just, why? Because it's perfect. Silence is perfect. If you have any sound, any utterance, it breaks perfection. And this is another reason why we can understand the name of God as something that is unspeakable. We're going to see it's more than that, much more than that, as we reveal what the unspeakable name of God is. But symbolically, we can kind of see that reference. So the light of the silence of the providence and the Father of the silence, the light of the word and the truth. So there's the idea of the word as well. The word is really important. In the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. The lost word of the master. What is word? What does it mean? Word, when word is used in ancient texts or biblical texts, it's often meant to convey information, meaning that when the world was spoken to reality, or the word was used to create a reality or something like that, it's because in ancient times they didn't have the concept of, say, like computer code or information. So when they're talking about the word, they're meaning that idea of information. So the light of the word and the truth, this idea of information, of structure, of code. Not words like a language that we would speak today. And this is going to be important as we reveal the name of God and why it's unspeakable as well, because it's not in a human language. It's not to be uttered in a human language. So the light of the word and the truth, the light of the incorruptions, the light of perfection, basically, the infinite light, a light that is limitless, that is not confined, the radiance from the eons of light of the unrevealable, unmarked, ageless, unproclaimable Father, the eon of the eons, autogenes, self-begotten, self-producing, alien, the really true eon. So this first paragraph is extremely important. They're describing the foundation of existence, because what they're going to do next is describe what comes forth from this. It says, then three powers came forth from him, the Father, the Mother, and the Son, etc., etc. What they're describing is the foundation of existence. And what does that mean? Well, they're describing a primary thing from which all things come forth. A simplistic understanding is that's sort of like explaining the Big Bang. It's like in the beginning there was nothing, then there was the Big Bang from which everything came forth. Now, of course, that's an impossible idea. Everything can't come from nothing at all. That's crazy. But I'm trying to just give an example of what they're doing here. They're describing a foundational moment from which all things came forth. In scientific materialism, atheism, they would equate that with the Big Bang. That was the Big Bang singularity was the foundational moment from which all things came forth. Now, of course, that's illogical and doesn't make any sense. Terence McKenna said that that's the litmus test of credulity, that it was just absolute insanity to believe in such a thing, and it really is. So, but anyway, that's what they're doing. They're trying to describe the foundation of reality. And they're describing this as, what are they describing it as? Well, something that can't be spoken, silence. See how it's being very equated to perfection and nothingness. But it's not nothingness in the way that science understands it. But just, we want to see all these different elements, right? Because this is all going to come together as we understand what the name of God is. So these are important things to understand. It's silence, it's nothingness, it's light, ageless, meaning it's eternal, and autogenes, self-begotten, self-producing, alien. Okay, so alien meaning not of this world, not of the material world. Autogenes, self-begotten, and self-producing, what does that mean? It means that, and sometimes they call this the virgin spirit as well. And I'll explain why in a minute. But the reason why they're emphasizing this idea of self-begotten and self-producing, meaning that it's the foundation of reality. It doesn't rely on anything else for its existence. It doesn't need something to produce it. It doesn't need something else to give birth to it. Nothing created it. It is eternal. It is ageless. It is self-begotten. It produced itself. It is the ground of existence. Now, self-producing doesn't mean that it once didn't exist and then suddenly popped into existence. It's eternal. What self-producing means is the idea of, in philosophy, as something that is self-grounded, self-grounding ground, meaning that it has aseity, meaning it has the reason for being within itself. Meaning, when you ask, how is it possible that this thing exists? The answer is contained within its own existence. Meaning, if you want to say, how does a chair exist? Well, you can say that a chair relies on other things for its existence. A chair relies on wood and relies on a chair maker. So the reason for being, or the way that a chair comes into existence, is because of other factors that it relies on. In other words, it's grounded in something else. A chair is grounded in wood and requires the formative abilities of a chair maker to produce it. So saying that the fundamental aspect of reality is self-grounding or ageless and self-begotten means that it has its own reason for being within itself. It depends only upon itself for its existence. And we're going to see what that has to do with the unspeakable name of God. And we're going to see how that is possible. We're just kind of laying out the foundation right now. I want to kind of give a brief overview of all this to get an idea of what's going on here before we reveal what the unspeakable name of God actually is, because we need a big picture of what's happening before we can really break this down and see how it relates to like the lost word of the master, Freemasonry, and all that. So we have this idea of a foundational principle, a ground of existence that they call the great invisible spirit, whose name cannot be uttered, who is the light of the light, ageless and self-begotten. Now, from this, three powers came forth: the Father, the Mother, and the Son. From the living silence, what came forth from the incorruptible Father, these came forth from the silence of the unknown Father. So what they're saying here is that from this self-grounding ground, it produced something from itself. That's important to remember. It is self-producing. So these things it is producing isn't something other than it. And you have this idea in Christianity and a lot of religions where it's sort of this weird separate duality, where you have God, and then God sort of creates the world and the universe, which is separate from God. Now, that's an impossible scenario. There is nothing in existence but God. And for God to create something that is other than itself leads to a lot of problems. For instance, how is it possible that one could create something from, when you're the only being in existence, the only material that you have to create from is yourself. It can only come from you. And another important thing to understand is that if God were to create something truly other than itself, truly, then that would limit God and make God finite. Ken Foldis describes this in one of his books on Hegel, where God is infinite, and if you have something that limits God, then that would mean that God was limited. It was no longer infinite. So if God creates the universe and the universe is not God, then that means there is something that is not God. And if there is something that is not God, then God is not infinite and limitless. There is a portion of reality that is not God. So anyway, this is the important thing that I'm getting across here, is that you have this foundational principle of existence that's about to produce something. And in producing something, it doesn't mean it's creating something other than itself. It's creating it from itself. In other words, if we want to understand this mathematically, it's transforming itself into a different pattern. So if you want to understand it sort of like a Rubik's Cube, you can imagine a solved Rubik's Cube as, say, being the foundational principle. And then if it alters itself by changing its pattern, you could say that it's producing something. It's producing a new pattern. But it hasn't created anything new. It's simply altering its own structure to create a different transformation of itself. So that's what's really important to understand. You have this self-grounding principle of reality that has the reason for being within itself, which we're going to explore how that's possible. But it has that. And then it's producing different aspects of reality by transforming itself. It's not creating anything. It's not like the Big Bang where it's like, oh, well, there was nothing at all. Then everything sprang into existence. No, you have this eternal thing that is exploring itself in its own transformations. Now, how is it doing this? Well, we're going to see it's doing this by sort of breaking its perfection, breaking its own perfection. Because perfection is nothingness. It's silence. It's stillness. Perfection is you can't say anything about perfection, because if you said something about perfection, it would involve a difference. Or, I mean, if you try to give it some sort of quality that demarcates it, then perfection is nothing. It's silence. It's stillness. It's perfect. When silence, when stillness, when perfection is broken, it gives rise to transformations. So you can imagine, again, like a solved Rubik's Cube. Pretend that a solved Rubik's Cube is perfection. Well, when it breaks perfection, it gives rise to new transformations. So breaking perfection is not necessarily a bad thing. That's what gives rise to all the beautiful experiences that we can have together right now. But anyway, so what you can see that this is really an early and ancient attempt to explain reality in a rational way, but doing so in the terms and ideas that they only had at the time. So you have this self-grounding idea, and then you have the three powers that come forth from this idea. So a lot of this might seem like, what are you talking about? What does this have to do with the unspeakable name of God? Well, when we get through this, you'll see, and I show what the name of God is, you'll realize, oh, okay, I understand now. I know why all this other information was important for knowing what the unspeakable name of God is. So this is going somewhere. This is important to know. This is something you need to know to understand what that name is. So you have this self-grounding ground of existence, and three powers came forth from him. They are the Father, the Mother, and the Son, from the living silence. Again, from this perfection that was broken, from the incorruptible Father. These came forth from the silence of the unknown Father. So what does it mean by saying the Father, the Mother, and the Son? Well, in Gnosticism, which this is a Gnostic text, particularly Sethian Gnosticism. You can see that relation from Seth to Set to the Gospel of the Egyptians. Seth, by the way, is the child of Adam and Eve. There was Cain and Abel, you know Cain and Abel, but there was also Seth. And Seth is extremely important. We'll be talking about Seth in probably a subsequent video on this gospel. But for now, we're talking about this aspect of reality producing itself from itself. So it says 3 powers come from him. They're the Father, the Mother, and the Son. Now we have to realize that when it says the Father, the Mother, and the Son, they're not really talking about beings. They're describing them as beings. Yes, they are. And symbolically, they're beings. But really what they are concepts. The Father, the Mother, and the Son. The Father is the concept of mind. The Mother is the concept of thought. And then the Son is the concept of self-thinking thought, or a mind that thinks about itself. So you have the Father, which is mind. Then you have the Mother, which is thought. When the Mother and the Father copulate or combine, or when mind and thought interact, you have thought thinking about itself. The Son, self-thinking thought. So this is now talking about how the foundational principle of existence is giving rise to a structure of concepts, a structure of mind. So the creative process of this being isn't creating a world, isn't creating an earth, isn't creating a universe. That hasn't happened yet. It's structuring itself as a mental entity. It is structuring its faculties of mind. Mind, thought, self-reflective thought. Now, by the way, you can see how mind and thought sort of produce symbolically from their interaction the Son. Now, the foundational principle of existence, the great invisible spirit, the unspeakable Father, is also called the Virgin Spirit. Now, why is it called the Virgin Spirit? Because the Father, the Virgin Spirit, doesn't require anything other than itself to produce. See how it's sort of like, if it required, say, a mate, symbolically, it would need something other than itself to produce something. But it's producing everything from itself. It's creating. Its children are its own production. It's a virgin spirit. Now remember, this is all symbolic. This is not meant to be taken literally. Gnosticism is highly symbolic. And so it means that it's, again, emphasizing self-producing. So this self-producing virgin spirit, from it comes the Father and the Mother, and from that interaction, the Son. So mind, thought, and self-thinking thought that reflects upon itself. And it says, and from that place, Domeron Doxameron came forth, the eon of the eons, and the light of each one of their powers. So what is Domeron Doxameron? Domeron Doxameron is the name given to the power of the great invisible spirit. And it's a Greek term that means Lord of the house or Lord of glory. So Domeron Doxameron, meaning Lord of the house or Lord of glory, is the name that they are giving to the creative power, the creative force of the great invisible spirit. And the reason why they're doing this is because the great invisible spirit itself has an unspeakable name, which is a secret symbol. So they're doing their best to, well, they're going to give a name to its creative power, and they're going to call it Domeron Doxameron, which is just a badass name. I think it's an awesome name. I love it. So from that place, Domeron Doxameron came forth, the eon of the eons, and the light of each one of their powers. So you can think of Domeron Doxameron as this power of light that permeates through all things, and is what allows everything to exist. It's what everything relies on. It's the foundation of everything, the light of each one of their powers. And thus the Son came forth the mother fifth, and the father sixth. He was but unheralded, is he who is unmarked among all the powers, the glories, and the incorruptions. From that place, the three powers came forth, the three Ogdoads that the Father brings forth in silence from his providence, from his bosom, the Father, the Mother, and the Son. I'm going to read these next parts kind of fast because I really want to get to the part where we're unveiling the name of God, because that's important. So I'm going to go through this part kind of quickly here. Forgive me, but I want to make sure that we can get this done because it's important. So, the first Ogdoad, because of which the thrice male child came forth, which is the thought and the word and the incorruption and the eternal life, the will, the mind, and the foreknowledge, the androgynous Father. So, by the way, when something said, you'll see the word thrice used a lot, like thrice male, or Hermes Trismegistus, the Hermes, the thrice great. What's with all the three stuff? The thrice great, the thrice male, the blah, blah, blah. Well, in ancient times, saying something thrice is kind of like saying, really. Like Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great, is like saying Hermes Trismegistus, the really great. The really, really, really great. It just puts emphasis on something. The thrice male, the really, really male, the very great, the malest of males, the greatest of greats, etc. So to say something that is thrice male is saying something is really male. But remember, in Gnosticism, they use the word male to represent the incorruptible realm or the true realm of light. So it's just emphasizing that this being is from that realm of light. But anyway, it's still concepts, right? These are concepts, will, mind, foreknowledge. These aren't actual living beings with bodies, etc. These are, you can think of it like code. Remember, this is all from the word. So think of it like code structuring itself. It hasn't produced a video game yet. So you can think of this as a mind structuring itself. It hasn't produced a world yet. It is still structuring itself according to pattern. And we have different rules and laws such as mind and thought, self-thinking thought, mind, foreknowledge, will. The second Ogdoad power, the mother, the virginal Babylon, who presides over the heaven, the uninterpretable power, the ineffable mother. She originated from herself. She came forth. She agreed with the Father of the silence. And there's just more of this talking about how she brings forth from her bosom the seven powers, the great light of the seven voices, and the word is their completion. It's just more talking about this mental entity of light structuring itself. These are the three powers from the Father, from his bosom. It just kind of goes on and on. Dominon Doximedon came forth, the eon of the eons, and the throne which is in him, and the powers which surround him, the glories and the incorruptions. So it's just talking about this perfect mind that's structuring itself, but we're finally going to get to the point where we can talk about why the name of God is unspeakable and what is it. The Father of the great light who came forth from the silence, he is the great Doximedon eon, in which the thrice male child rests, and the throne of his glory was established in it. So we're having the Father, this perfect mind from which you have its perfect power, which has self-thinking thought residing within it. And the throne of his glory was established in it, the one on which his unrevealable name is inscribed on the tablet. One is the Word, the Father of the light of everything, who came forth from the silence while he rests in the silence. He whose name is an invisible symbol, a hidden invisible mystery, came forth. Now, this is really cool. Here we're going to get into it. So, the throne of his glory was established in it, and on this throne is inscribed the Word, the unrevealable name of the Father of the light of everything, where he rests in silence. So this is really cool. Here you have the throne, which is inscribed the invisible word. What does this represent? Well, a throne is on which something sits. It's on which something is supported. So here we have the throne on which the name of the unspeakable name is written, is saying that this is the ground of everything. This is on which everything rests, saying that the unspeakable name of God, which is the invisible symbol, is inscribed on the throne, is saying that this is the thing on which everything, all reality, all existence rests. Philosophically, this is the ground of existence, where he rests in the silence, whose name is an invisible symbol. Now we're going to get, and it says, a hidden invisible mystery came forth. And here you have, it's very, just 7 vowels. 7 vowels. And what this is glossolalia, or speaking in tongues. And essentially what this means is just making noises, speaking in tongues. They can't, it's an invisible mystery. It's unspeakable. So all they can do is make noises, these vowel noises. So let's really break this down and explain what this is what's going on here. So we have the idea that this is a perfect being and a being of pure light. Now, this being of pure light from itself starts to structure itself as a mental structure. But then ultimately what will happen is that the material world will be generated from it. Now, if you watch my video called God is an Alien, I know the title is a little ridiculous, but it's very important. But I talk about this in that video. And by alien, I just mean not of this world. It's a being that is not of this world. It's a being of infinite light, but ultimately fashions the world from itself. Now, it fashions the world from itself from its own light. Now, it fashions the world from itself from its own light because, as physicist David Bohm points out, you can see David Bohm right here, who is considered one of the most influential physicists of the 20th century. David Bohm talks about how matter, the material world, can be generated from light. How? By light slowing itself. So David Bohm talks about light as being able to produce matter by slowing itself. And Bohm refers to matter as frozen light. And I'm going to read some quotes from David Bohm. Bohm says, light can carry information about the entire universe. Light, by interactions of different rays, produce particles in all the diverse structures of matter. So Bohm continues, they are ripples on this vast ocean of light. This ocean of energy could be thought of as an ocean of light. So this is what's really cool. Bohm is describing light as being able to carry information about the entire universe, and through the interactions of its own rays, it produces particles and all the diverse structures of matter. And these particles, these diverse structures of matter, can be thought of like ripples on a vast ocean of light. Bohm continues, all matter is a condensation of light into patterns moving back and forth at average speeds, which are less than the speed of light. So in other words, all matter becomes like condensed light that results from light slowing itself down. Matter is condensed or frozen light. When we come to light, we are coming to the fundamental activity in which existence has its ground. The universe consists of frozen light. Now, this is what's important. When we come to light, we are coming to the fundamental activity in which existence has its ground. What has the Gospel of the Egyptians been saying this entire time? The unutterable Father, who's the light of the light, the eons of light, the light is just emphasized again and again and again, is the ground of existence, eternal, ageless, self-begotten, self-producing. It produces from itself all that there is. Well, what can do that? According to Bohm, light can do that. Because according to Bohm, when light slows itself down and interacts with itself, it produces matter. Now, if that sounds weird or hard to grasp, just think of water and ice. You can think of a vast reservoir of water, an ocean of water. in which ice is floating in it. Well, ice is just transformed water. Water produces ice within itself and from itself, simply by varying its structure. So you can think of as a vast ocean of light, or as a vast ocean of water can produce ice within itself, think of a vast ocean of light producing matter within itself by varying its structure, by slowing its rays down. So again, when Bohm says, matter is condensed or frozen light. The universe consists of frozen light. When we come to light, we are coming to the fundamental activity in which existence has its ground. And we have, emphasized over and over again that according to the Gospel of the Egyptians, the incorruptible ground of all existence, the self-producing, ageless being, is light. And upon its throne, the ground is inscribed its invisible name, which is a secret symbol, unutterable. So, to continue to understand this, we have to look at another symbol, which is the flower of life. Now, the flower of life is a symbol that is popular in a system of thought known as sacred geometry. So what is this symbol? If you look at it closely, it's made of nothing but circles. That's it. Just circles and circles and circles and circles and circles and circles. That's it. If you look at this pattern, it's just a bunch of circles. Now in sacred geometry, the claim is that this symbol represents the ground of all existence, in that all existence comes forth from this collection of circles. So first I want you to see a connection here. David Bohm is saying that light is the ground of existence. The Gospel of the Egyptians is saying that light is the ground of existence. And sacred geometry is saying that this collection of circles, this mathematical pattern of circles, is the ground of all existence. Well, how does this relate? How does this all connect together? It might seem kind of unrelated. What does circles have to do with anything? Well, the thing is when we understand the concept of mathematics, when we look at what a circle is, as soon as we have a circle, we also have the concept of frequency. Frequency and circles are intertwined together. Because if we take a look at a circle in motion, so take a look at here, and in a corner you can see a circle. And you can see that a circle is related to sinusoidal waves. You have a sinusoid and a cosine, a sine and a cosine. So a circle in motion produces two waveforms. So essentially what this means is that the concept of circles and the concept of frequency or waves, it's the same concept. And what I mean by it's the same concept, it's kind of like if you look at this pen, you can look at this pen straight on and it has a certain pattern. Or if you look at it from the side, it has a different pattern, but it's the same object. You can see it, the information of this pen from this direction or from this perspective. A circle is the same thing. You can see it from the perspective of it being a circle or the perspective of it being a unification of two sinusoidal waves. It's the same thing. As soon as you have a circle, you have two sinusoidal waves. Just like as soon as you have this portion of the pen, you also have this portion of the pen. You can't, it's not, it's all combined in the same concept. So to say that you have a collection of circles is to say the same thing as you have a collection of frequencies or the collection of waves. Well, what is light? Ultimately, what light is frequency. The only thing that separates one frequency of light from another, or one color from another, is its frequency. I believe that red is 450 terahertz, I want to say. I could be wrong about that, but I think the color red is somewhere along the lines of a frequency of 450 terahertz. Don't nail me to the cross on that, but I'm pretty sure it's something like that. So different colors are just different frequencies. So different forms of light are just different oscillations of frequency. So here we can tie in the concept of circles, waves, and frequency. So to think of this being a collection of circles can also be thought of as this being a collection of frequencies, which can also be thought of as a collection of light. So you see that you have all these different concepts coming together. And when we understand this concept of a circle in motion producing sinusoidal waveforms, we can understand this as the source formula or Euler's formula, a very specific formula in mathematics, which can be used to mathematically understand the ground of all existence, which produces waveforms, which produces light, which can be used to create matter, as David Bohm said, by simply slowing itself down or condensing itself. This is also very similar to Hegelian thought, where Hegel points out that reality is a rational structure that others itself into matter. Well, this is reality being a mathematical structure that forms itself through varying its own internal frequencies. And we can see this everywhere when we get into quantum mechanics. We can see that reality is based on frequency patterns. This is just emphasized again and again everywhere and over. So the reason why that the name of God is unutterable and unspeakable is because the name of God as a word isn't a word as in a sound. It's silence. It's not something that can be spoken. It's not something that can be uttered. It is information. Particularly, it is a mathematical concept. And this mathematical concept is equivalent to understanding the formal structure of light. And this formal structure of light, as per David Bohm, can give forth and give rise to all matter by varying its internal structure. So why can the name of God, why can't it be uttered? Because it's not a word in the human language. Why is it that they're just making noises to try and describe it? Because it's ultimately a mathematical structure, a mathematical formula that gives rise to existence. Now, this ties into a lot of different concepts, because if we look in Freemasonry, they have this concept of the lost word of the master. And so if we want to know this idea of the lost word of the master, the lost word of the master is, just one moment. Hold on one second here. Because not only are we going to look at the lost word of the master, but the concept of Lilith as well. Because Lilith attempts to, or utters the name of God and becomes cursed for doing so. And just one moment here. So the lost word of the master, it's a term that's used in Freemasonry. And it refers to a word that is used by the master builder of a temple. And so it's a word used by a master builder of a temple. And you can see symbolically what this means is that it's the word of creation. And the idea is that when you were to understand or learn the lost word of the master, it's about understanding the deep mysteries of the universe, the nature of the divinity, and the nature of creation, and that it's an attribute of the supreme being. So according to Freemasonry, just to sum up, there's this concept of the last word of the master, which is used to build the temple. It's a creative word. It's a word that refers to understanding divinity, and it is an aspect of the supreme being. So the last word of the master is this creative word, this word of creation. Again, it's a mathematical concept, and Freemasonry is steeped in mathematics. The G in the symbol of Freemasonry means geometry, or it can mean God as well, but geometry or God, because they're synonymous, as in mathematics and God, and upon the square and compass, again, another geometrical or mathematical concept. So you can see these ideas are in everything, everywhere, whether you're looking in Freemasonry, or you're looking in Gnosticism, or you're looking in physics. This idea of reality being this structure of light, this structure of mathematics, And this creative word is not in a language that can be, it's not like English. It's not a word. It's not like, oh, what's the name of God? Oh, it's Joe. No, it's this mathematical concept that is the creative force. And this is why anyone who knows the name of God will have the power of creation. And one reason why Lilith was cursed was because Lilith refused to be subservient to Adam and left the Garden of Eden because she refused to be second class. And she uttered the name of God, which is like equivalent to making oneself equal to God, or claiming divine status for oneself. And this, of course, really pissed off God and cursed Lilith. So let me bring this up here one last time. Yeah. So here we can really see, we can represent this unutterable, unspeakable name of God as a concept rooted in a mathematical structure that is self-producing, self-generating light, self-begotten, on which all things lie, the throne of God, on which the unutterable mystery, whose name is a secret symbol, is inscribed upon it. This is what it is. It is the generative power of all reality. And it's something that we are all a part of, and we can all master, and we can all come to knowledge of through knowledge of ourselves, the world, and the universe. So there is a lot more to talk about. We just looked at cheese. There is so much more to the Gospel of the Egyptians, so we are going to continue to explore it. We're going to read and uncover more of the Gospel of the Egyptians next week, but I highly recommend checking out my other videos. There's so much more on this sort of thing on my channel. If you enjoy my work, like and subscribe. Consider supporting on Patreon. If you ever felt like you've learned something or gotten something from my videos, Patreon is the best way to support my work. You'll get access to secret videos, weekly secret live streams, our hidden Discord server, The Citadel, and it helps out a lot. I really appreciate it. It's how I'm able to create content, bring out more content, and get content like this out there, so I appreciate it. A big shout out to everyone who does support on Patreon, especially philanthropist Zach, Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Michael, Angela, Maria, Top of the World, Ethan, Joel, and It's Fashida. And you can also support by hitting the join button on YouTube right below this video.